I read just shy of 40 books this year, and almost all of them were nonfiction and fall into the self-help or personal development genre. Many of them are for the Bookworm podcast that I do with my friend Corey Hickson, where we talk about a different productivity book every 2 weeks, but a lot of others I read just because I enjoy learning new things and wrestling with big ideas. And just like I did last year, in this video, I'm gonna share the best books that I read in 2025. Now, last year I picked books that were published in that calendar year. There were quite a few to choose from, so I had no trouble picking 8. This year, I wanted to squeeze a couple more solid book recommendations in though, so I'm actually gonna break this apart into 2 different sections. The 5 best new books of 2025 and the 5 best books that were new to me in 2025. So the first section is the 5 best books of 2025. These are all books that were published this year. I'm going to share my rankings in reverse order, starting with number 5 and working my way up to number 1. So the first book I want to mention here is Sketch Your Mind by Zsolt Vixian. This self-published book is one of the more recent books that I've read, and it's written by the guy who developed the Excalidraw and Excalibrain plugins for Obsidian. While I don't follow the exact system that Zsolt outlines here, I do think this book is a great resource for getting you to think about how visual thinking might be able to help you get more out of your notes and ideas. I'm not quite ready to embrace visual Zettelkasten just yet, but even so, this book is a great primer for using visual thinking tools to help you look at things from different angles. Zsolt also has a YouTube channel and runs a visual thinking workshop if you really want to dive deep into the topic of visual thinking, but this book is very good. The next book on the list is Time Anxiety by Chris Guillebeau. Chris was the person behind the World Domination Summit conference back in the day, and he runs a blog called The Art of Nonconformity. This book is interesting because it's a take on the topic of time management that approaches things from a little bit of a different angle. So the main argument of this book is that time management is actually an illusion since time keeps advancing whether we use it or not. So we should focus instead on making the most of our energy and attention. It's a bit of a contrarian take in the productivity space, but I like this approach and think it's a good book for those who are a little bit tired with all the traditional productivity advice out there. The next book on my list is Wisdom Takes Work by Ryan Holiday. This is the 4th book in his Stoic Virtue series, and it might just be my favorite. This one is obviously on the topic of wisdom, and in typical Ryan Holiday style, it has a bunch of tiny chapters that weave historical storytelling with philosophical discussion in a masterful way that is both insightful and inspirational. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Stoicism, but I still really enjoyed this book, and I think anyone who's interested in PKM or sense making in general will really enjoy this one. Next book on the list is The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. I loved this book when I read it earlier this year, and it does a great job of describing the different types of wealth and giving you tactics for helping you optimize your life for more of what really matters. A lot of self-help books tend to focus on being more successful and making more money, and this book is a breath of fresh air that helps you understand what really matters. Now, I did a whole video on this book, which you can check out here, but the short version is that I'm very much in agreement with Sahil that money isn't the only thing that matters, and I think he does a great job making a very compelling argument for designing the life you want to live. But the very best book of 2025 for me is easily Tiny Experiments by Anne Laure-Lecouf. This book is amazing. I love how this book finds the balance between binary goal setting, which tends to create this pass-fail mindset, and habit formation, which can feel like a major commitment whenever you try to create a new habit. With the tiny experiments metaphor, it eliminates this pressure since you're just committing to doing the thing for a short period and seeing what comes of it. Now, I did a video on this book a while back, which you can see here, but the bottom line is that this is a brilliant book that everyone should read. So those are my 5 best books of 2025, but I didn't have as many great books to choose from as I have in previous years. So I decided to also select 5 more books that I read for the first time this year. Now, again, I'm going to go in reverse order, and the first book I'm going to pick here is Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. This fascinating book examines why some ideas tend to hang around and become widely adopted while others fail to gain traction. Now, I've owned this book for several years, but I finally read it this year and I really enjoyed it. As a content creator who wants to communicate my ideas more effectively, I found several things here that were helpful, but even if you're just looking to communicate your ideas as a knowledge worker a little bit better, this book is definitely worth a read. The next book on the list is Sponsor Magnet by Justin Moore. Now, this book is technically for creators like me who are working with potential sponsors. But there's a lot in here that goes beyond just landing sponsorship deals. There's some great general business advice here, including things to be aware of in any contract negotiation. There are some very effective frameworks in this book also, including the main one, which is the sponsorship wheel, which you can see here. Now, personally, this book is great for me as an independent creator, but I was surprised that my Bookworm co-host and university professor, Corey, enjoyed this one just as much as I did. So there's a lot of general lessons that you can learn from this book. The next book I'm going to pick is From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. Again, I've had this book for a while, but I haven't read it because it's basically about navigating a midlife crisis. That doesn't sound all that fun. Well, it's not exactly about that, but it is about finding meaning in the second half of life, so it's definitely helpful for that sort of thing. Now, I'm a big fan of finding your purpose and living in alignment with your vision and values, so this book ended up being right up my alley. Arthur Brooks has a writing style that I really enjoy, and there were some great stories in here as well. It's kind of hard to describe this one in a way that makes it seem exciting, but this is quietly one of the better books that I've ever read. The next book I'll pick here is a new version of an old book, which is Poor Charlie's Almanack, technically by Charlie Munger. Basically a collection of his writings, but in particular, I'm recommending here the Stripe Press version, which not only has a beautiful hardcover version of gathered wisdom from Warren Buffett's business partner, but also a free online version with a beautiful website and a lot of extra material and media that makes for a very immersive experience. This is one of those classic business books, and it's always interesting for me to see how some of the world's most successful people think. But since the website version is free, there is no reason not to check this one out. And finally, the best book I read this year besides Tiny Experiments was Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. This is the book that was made famous by A.J. Brown, the Philadelphia Eagles All-Pro receiver, who cameras caught reading this book on the sideline during a playoff game. That's how the book came on my radar, but it's actually a great book about mindset and mental toughness that I'd never heard of before. There was definitely a little bit of right thing at the right time for me when I read this, but I've read lots of books like this, and this is one of the best that I've come across. While I'm not a huge fan of the framing of this book as a guide to achieve extraordinary performance, this book was so incredibly helpful for understanding the power of the mind and directing it toward what you really want that I really don't care. I agree with the author that more than anything, we tend to get in our own way. That definitely applies to me. And this book gave me some great mental models for looking at things in a more helpful and ultimately healthier way at a time when I was honestly really struggling. So this book had a major positive impact on my life this year, and it's one of my all-time favorites. All right, so there you have it. Those are my top 10 books that I read this year. But before we go, I want to make a combined top 10 list, which again will go in reverse order. At number 10, Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. It was good, but it didn't really feel life-changing to me. At number 9, Sketch Your Mind by Jolt Fixian. I liked the overall message a lot, but the frameworks and systems didn't really click for me. Still, it's really good. At number 8, Time Anxiety by Chris Guillebeau. Love the writing style. The perspective is definitely unique, but it's certainly not for everyone. At number 7, Sponsored Magnet by Justin Moore. A fun book, an easy read, but very specific in its approach. At number 6, From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. I enjoyed this one more than I thought I would, but talking about aging and eventually death is a tough topic to recommend to people. At number 5, Poor Charlie's Almanack. Charlie is a big fan of mental models, which I love, but he also gets on his soapbox a little bit, so you definitely have to work through what he shares and keep what resonates. At number 4, Wisdom Takes Work by Ryan Holiday. Really enjoyed this one, but kinda done with the Stoic philosophy stuff and excited to see where he goes next. At number 3, The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. Great book about what really matters in life, and for some, this might be the most impactful book you'll ever read. Since I put a lot of thought into my vision and values already, I'm going to put this one at number 3. Then at number 2, Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. This one definitely helped me a ton, and it's only number 2 because my personal best book of 2025, Tiny Experiments by Anne-Laure Lecouf, is incredible. If you're only going to pick up one book as a result of watching this video, make it that one. So that'll do it for this video on my best books of 2025. I've included links to the Bookworm podcast episodes for these books where appropriate in the description below this video. And if you want my mind map book notes from these books, I've got a Pay What You Want Obsidian Vault that has not only these books, but also all of my notes from over 200 books that I've read. Now you can download my personal book notes vault right now by going to practicalpkm.com/notes. I also share these book notes in my email newsletter, along with links to the occasional cool new PKM resource that I find online and an original PKM essay every Monday morning. You can sign up for the newsletter for free right now by going to practicalpkm.com. Thanks for watching, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in another video.